I guess for me, initially, what addiction is a solution. It's a solution to a problem that that person is experiencing that they can't get a grip of, you know. And it starts out as that. And as with a lot of behaviors that we repeat over and over again, it then becomes an addiction, because, you know, if we do something long enough, we change our brain chemistry, and an addiction can then form. First of all, I love the questions that you sent through. They were really insightful, and I've been really looking forward to doing this interview. So, you know, thank you for the opportunity. I guess in doing this, it has made me think about, you know, my story, and you know, I've told it a few times in different books I've written, but I think what's relevant really is in terms of empowerment, what helped me get to where I'm at today. Because, you know, I left school with very few qualifications. You know, I went straight into the armed forces. I found out very quickly that really wasn't for me. You know, being told what to do, it was okay for a while, but I had something inside me that was wanting so much to be more than that. So I left the army and did what a lot of people do, is go into sales. And to be honest with you, I was absolutely hopeless. I would spend, you know, huge amounts of time just talking with people and finding out about them, and I'd sell nothing. But what it made me realize is that I had a real love of people and their stories, and I wanted to get to know them. And so, in a way, I sort of thought, well, you know, why not do this? Why not do this for a living? You know, I didn't sort of think about at school or college becoming a therapist or you know, a trainer, but it's the love of people that really got me to do what I do for the last 25 years now. So that's what I do. You know, I see clients as a therapist. I run a training college as well. That's what I've done for like the last 20 years.
Fantastic. Sue and I were talking beforehand, actually. Both said, you know, I wonder if Tom hypnotised as well.
Well, we've got some time, so.
Neil, I'm just getting a little bit of echo back from you. I don't know if you're hearing it, Tom, just to let you know.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Tom, just to kind of give the listeners a bit of a short intro. So you know, this is all about empowerment. So you're the ideal guest, really, looking at your story and what you do to help other people as well. And it's about giving other people the inspiration as well. So anything that you can, you know, any advice or tips or just telling your story to our listeners, I think is going to inspire anyway. So just happy for you to get straight in there and let us know what your story is.
Okay, great. Well, you know, I've been thinking about the times over the last 20 years where I've been really moved in terms of opening up into myself, and it's a story I've told a few times, but not to too many people, because it was a very moving time in my life where I guess I'd been working as a therapist for a few years, and I found myself, which I've written about, just suddenly. I'd accepted to go and speak at a conference in Russia, in St. Petersburg. And at that time, it was like the late 90s. Things weren't like they are now in Russia. And I sort of found myself almost just at St. Petersburg airport thinking, what the heck am I doing here, you know? And I managed to get to the place that was running this seminar, and it was a seminar on international conflict resolution. And which seemed quite apt at the time, because I was in complete conflict myself, wondering, you know, what my future held and why I was doing what I was doing. And once I'd arrived at this venue, which was an old castle, a Tsar's castle, which was completely run down and dilapidated. I mean, you know, the first thing I did when I got out of the taxi was knocked on this huge wooden door, and it was like a scene out of the Munsters, you know. And the door slowly opened and creaked opened, and I thought, well, I'm here for a reason. I have no idea what it is. But I walked in, and I looked over, and I'm not joking. There were two clowns standing in front of me. And I hadn't been smoking anything or taking anything seriously. It was just quite bizarre. And one of them leant over and said to me, and I looked at his, we had been given name badges when we walked in, and one of them leant over and he said, "What are you doing here, son?" And I looked at him, and his name was Wildman. And I said, "Do you know what? I actually don't know." I mean, I was there to give a talk about hypnotherapy and NLP, because it was, sort of not relatively new, but not so much heard of at that time. And the other clown then leant over and he said, "Well, we got a week. I guess we're going to find out." And that was the very first time that I met this guy who in a sense, through his teaching, changed my life. And his name was Patch Adams. You may have heard of him. He made a film called Patch Adams, and it was an incredibly inspiring film, and he's an incredibly inspiring man. And I spent a week with him just learning from him, and I was presenting with him. It was the most bizarre 7 days of my life.
Tom, was he actually one of the clowns?
He was one of the clowns, yeah. I mean, Patch Adams basically dresses as a clown. He runs a hospital in America called the Gessenheit Institute. And his whole thing, if you like, is about giving people hope. And in those 7 days, I learned one of the things that really changed my life at that time, and that was about hope, and actually how much hope can drive you forward and give you a reason, and to get you back connected with your why. And that's what I learned at that time. And then coming back from America, I then was I found a bug, if you like, to meet new people. And I then traveled into Russia and the United States, and I've been traveling ever since all over Eastern Europe and Europe, just to learn from other people, because as far as I'm concerned, other people have so much to teach us, and I feel privileged to have got so much from people all around the world.
Just to ask a question there, when you say your kind of inspiration is other people, what is it that you see in other people that inspires you? Is it that potential there is in all of us?
It's the potential, and it's the curiosity, and wanting to know about others, and wanting to join with others. I mean, one of the questions you asked me was about emotion, and one of the things I suffered with, I guess, for many years was anger. Growing up in the way I did, and sort of thinking that things should have been different, made me feel very angry, and in a sense I used it initially to drive me forward, but it works for a while, and then it stops working, because ultimately, if you're driven by anger, you're just going to end up, upsetting people. So in meeting other people, I found, especially in different parts of the world, a combined and sort of unanimous desire for peace, and it helped me find peace within myself. And that peace, I think, opened me up to achieving more than I ever dreamed possible. So yeah, it's the united desire for peace, I think, which I found has been the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned in there about how kind of that hope reconnected you with your why. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit more in terms of what your specific why is?
Okay. As I said, initially it was about achieving as much as possible, and I had a point to prove. I came from a childhood and growing up where I didn't really have much. The classical sort of shoes in my holes in my shoes story, which meant that I wanted to get out there and achieve as much as I possibly could. And I remember someone telling me early on that you'll never amount to much. And that made me even angrier, and that made me even more driven. But you see, it only lasts a while. And when I found peace, it connected me with passion and desire to make a difference in the world, because I truly believe that's what we're here to do, each and every one of us, is to make a difference in the way that we're here to do, and that's different for different people. Mine, I believe, is to help people get connected with their emotions truly deeply. I do that through, the different techniques I use as a psychotherapist. But I believe that it's not just knowing how to do that; it's actually wanting to do it and being present. You can learn skills, but character is far more. It's far more powerful, and that's where you get connected with your wisdom. So, yeah, it's about wanting and helping to help people really get connected with what's deep within inside them.
Fantastic. And so, sorry, there's a bit. You get that?
No, go on, Neil. It's fine.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned about how your most empowering emotion had been kind of anger, and you were driven by anger and used that to kind of spur you on. How that's now become kind of peace. So you'd say peace is the thing that kind of empowers you the most?
Peace has been what's empowered me to let myself be what I am. You see, I guess when you're working from an emotion like anger, I tended always to be somebody that I thought I should be.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found a sense of peace inside me, I was able to connect with who I am, and that's somebody that has a deep connection with other people. So peace was the state that allowed me to find myself. I'm just, I can get just as sometimes irritable about stuff as other people. So I don't, I'm not walking around in a peaceful state completely all the time. But it's more of an inner peace that really has connected me with my calling, if you like.
Yeah.
What I hear there as well, Tom, is that it was partly perhaps your self-acceptance that gave you the more peace, and the more peace also gave you more self-acceptance as well.
Yeah.
On that, like I 100% believe, we're all connected on a very deeper level, and that connection is vital, I think, between all of us. But also, I believe that an element of self-study, like time alone, is so key as well. So, how do you kind of help the people you work with on that basis? Because that time of self-study and aloneness is very personal, isn't it?
It very much is, yes. It is, and I mean, the way that I work with people is generally on a one-to-one basis. So we have the space to go to that personal level. It's one of the things that I didn't struggle with, but is missing when I work with a group. Maybe is that ability to really go to stuff that maybe you haven't gone to for a very good reason, because you don't want to let it out, or it's painful, or you don't think you should be thinking that way. And so to do that in a group sometimes is a little bit difficult, but that's why the majority of my work is done on a one-to-one basis, to have that safeness and that space to really let out what's there. Sometimes when you say something for the first time, you've never heard it before. You might have thought it, but you've never said it before. So to have the space to say it in safety, you can change your mind. You can say, do you know what, that's not right. I don't believe that. I don't think that. But to say in a group, that can be quite difficult. Yeah. So, yeah, it's the one-to-one work that I find, really makes a difference for people, for me.
And so one question coming off the back of that, obviously, if your kind of prime emotions that drive you have changed, have you got any techniques that you use on a regular basis to manage your emotions? Are there anything that you could share with our listeners that they can use, that if they're finding themselves kind of going into like an angry state and that's not where they want to be, is there any little tricks you can suggest to kind of manage those emotions and get yourself out of that situation?
Yeah, definitely. And it's it's something I've been sort of exploring. I've been doing a doctorate basically in anger for the last 8 years. I'm just getting to just about to submit it now. So I've been looking at lots of different ways that can help people. You know, one of the things that so often is taught to people that are suffering from anger or a difficult, fiery emotion like that is to count to 10, which is totally pointless, because you're already there. It's too late. So one of the things that I often help people do and teach them is to listen to what the emotion is saying. It's there for a reason. You know, anger has just as much place to be as joy and peace and happiness and all of that, because it's a message. So one of the techniques that I often take people through is what I call the conference room technique. And you can do this, you know, through guided meditation or just by simply closing your eyes and imagining it. But to imagine sitting at a table, a conference room table or a kitchen room table, at the head of the table, as the executive, if you like, of the ego or the personality or you, and to invite each of the difficult emotions into the conference room to take a seat, and one at a time give them the ability to speak and to say what it is that they are not able to say. Because it's not often the emotions that we struggle with, it's the conflict that we feel angry but we don't want to be angry, or we feel jealous, or we feel hurt or pain or sadness, and we get angry because of that. So it's about giving each part of us a voice, and when we can do that, we often find out what's driving it, what's beneath it, and that can make often an immediate impact in terms of stopping fighting what's inside.
I love that analogy, Tom, of just sitting around the table. Yeah, super. You know, it makes me think of the animated film Inside Out. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but it gives me that kind of visual. And when I watching that film and having that like mainstream out there, where the inner voice is being discussed now, I thought that was quite new. I thought that was quite refreshing to see, Disney and Pixar and all that doing that. So the more the people, I think, have that dialogue with different parts of themselves, the better. But also, like what you were mentioning about trying to find out, why that emotion has come about, not just acknowledging that it's there and you are angry, but digging deeper and finding out, where does it come from? What has caused that, and how you can change it.
Yeah. Go on now.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, it's fantastic advice, and I think, like you say, Tom, all of us have our emotions for a reason, and regardless of that reason, sometimes a little bit too quick to criticise ourselves for how we're feeling, rather than actually accepting it and thinking, okay, why do I feel like this? What purpose is this serving for me? What is this supposed to help me achieve?
Sorry, Neil, you broke up a bit at the end.
So yeah, I was just saying, it's I think it's that thing of we sometimes we can be too quick to criticize ourselves when we feel what we would call negative emotions. As people, we have a tendency sometimes just to kind of think it's wrong rather than to listen to why the emotion's there and actually how it could help us.
Yeah. And I think often the biggest problem for people is that immediate judgment that it shouldn't feel, when in fact the feelings are there for a reason. They're there to help you become aware that something's happening inside you, or you're in a situation that you're not happy about, or that you're not, you're in life in a place that you don't want to be. You want to be achieving something different or more. And so as far as I'm concerned, it's so important to listen to them. Too often we're told to not feel this or not feel that, and it just creates problems.
Yeah. So, I mean, with something like fear, would you say that fear is a friend? Would you say fear is a foe? Would you say it could be both?
I often describe it almost like it's a bit of a dance, isn't it? Really, it's like a tango, fear, because in a sense it can really move you to do something. It can move you to action. If you want to achieve something, fear can move you into public speaking or running a webinar or taking some action that will help you get where you want to be. But the only problem is that when you get there, if you haven't really addressed the fear, then your achievements and you know what you're doing sort of is laced with some kind of danger. So rather than sort of, you know, the old adage of feel the fear and do it anyway, I found what's really more helpful is to ask what the fear is about first. Because, you know, some of the decisions I've made in life that have been based on fear have led me into a world of trouble. You know, there was this wonderful saying by I think Les Brown, motivational speaker, says that, you know, your skill and your talent can take you to a place where your character can't maintain. Mm. And I think once I got rid of the fear and started to base my achievements on passion and drive and wanting to help people and make a difference, when I achieved those things, they felt so much more grounded. You know, I didn't have to carry the fear of what if it now goes wrong. Yeah. And that's often the problem. You know, you've got future fear about things that, you know, that you haven't done before and you want to get right, and that's really quite natural. But that past fear about I never get things right and this is going to go wrong too can really make such a mess of things, you know.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned past fear and future fear, because to me, I've got this belief that all fear is in the future. Yeah, it might have references that draw on the past, but you can't be fearful of something that's already happened. You can only be fearful of it happening again.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've heard that you know, a lot of times, but having done a lot of research into emotion and especially memory as well, it's kind of come to an acceptance now that our memories they're quite faulty, which I think, you know, you probably can appreciate, and that when we think about an event, we remember the last time that we were there or we were in it. But that's only based on the last time that we remembered that event before that, never on the first sort of time it ever happened. So memories get really skewed along the way and throughout life, and we tend to have a fear of the idea of something. So that idea can only be based on the last time it happened. So there is sort of an interplay there between, in time, the now and the past and the present, and how we carry fear in that way. So I think it's a very complex area, of course.
I think that we can take on other people's fear as well. You know, in the past, you know, there can be an incident where we're around somebody who's been fearful, and our energy, or we take on that fear. So that, you know, that kind of mismatched wiring of us remembering back might associate that moment with us. You know, so yeah, it's
yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, I work with people with phobias that, you know, one of my busiest times was after 9/11, where people were coming to see me for fear of flying, and they never had any bad incidents. So we can absorb things much more easily than people, I think, give us credit.
Yeah.
I think the best analogy I've ever heard on this was, you know, if you go on a plane and you come off the plane on the journey and you go to the baggage reclaim, whose bags do you look for? Your own, right? You don't start picking up everybody else's baggage to take it away from you. But in life, that's exactly what we do.
Yeah.
You know, rather than in reality saying, actually, even my baggage is looking a little bit tired now, I'm going to leave it behind. We just get, like, you know, trolleys and trolleys and just load everybody's stuff on and take it all away with us. And then, Tom, yeah, from what you were just describing there, I think there is an element of kind of like internal Chinese whispers, isn't there? You know, it's like when people tell a story. You know, each time you tell the story, there's a little bit of the last time you told the story that finds its way in. And so, you know, if you watch a video of someone telling a story and then the same person telling the same story, say 2 years later, you know, a lot of celebrities and things, you see this when they tell their backstory. Actually, it's changed. And although the story is the same, the way they tell it has changed enough that actually there's probably a few things that are maybe embellished or been left out or whatever, and it's not a deliberate thing. It's just, you know, the more you tell that story, the more you come to believe the new version of it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I hear this with people I work with so much. You know, we'll be working and then sort of I'll say, so it sounds like this or it sounds like that, and then 6 weeks later they will repeat exactly what I've said as if it's their own. And you know, I do feel sometimes compelled to say, well, no, I said that, but it's not helpful. So you know, memory is so you know, our brains are so plastic that you know, they're so pliable that it's yeah.
And I think, I mean, we're all individuals having our own individual experience of every single moment. So we're obviously going to remember it in a very different way, aren't we? You know, every bit of our past is going to impact how we remember that moment. So yeah, it's a very intricate weave, I think, inside our minds of the neurons and how we remember, definitely. When it comes to that then, Tom, like, have you worked with people who you can recognize have picked up fear or emotions from other people? And do you work with those people in a different way to kind of release that?
Okay, that's a good question. I mean, it tends to happen a lot of the time for all of us. You know, if I'm, for example, working in a group and you know, to make it relative sort of now, if I'm working in a group of people, it's highly unlikely that I'm not going to absorb some of the energy that's there. You know, I have to ask myself the question that if I didn't, how present am I? So we're absorbing things from people all the time, emotions, good and bad, because of course we're all, you know, we've all got these emotions and they touch us in different ways. So yeah, it happens a lot, and it often happens without us realizing. You know, I sometimes if I'm coming away from a group, you know, I might get home and I'm getting irritable with the most ridiculous things, and then I say to myself, crikey, what's this about? Okay, so, and I can start to name what I've been soaking up in the day, and it's almost like I'm almost like repeating something I've heard or repeating somebody's story in my behavior and actions.
It's clear to see how driven you are by helping other people. How open are you to actually kind of asking for help or accepting help yourself from other people?
This is a great question. Now, I was thinking a lot about this, and it took me immediately back to when I was a teenager, and it lasted for many years. But when I was a teenager, my dad at the time said to me, he sat me down on the bed and said, Tom, you know, you've got to start learning to ask for help, because I was like super self-sufficient. I was Mr. Self-Sufficient, and I was like that for many years. And you know, in a way, it was my way of making sure things didn't go wrong. If I do it myself, then it, you know, I get it to the best of my ability, and I'm so glad I let that go, because you know, it became very isolating. And I asked myself the question then, crikey, why does no one want to collaborate with me or talk to me, and why do I feel so lonely? So, you know, when I realized that, I was able to let it go. And there's one thing I love doing now, and that's actually collaborating with people and sharing with people, because this is what it's all about at the end of the day. You know, you can have all the success in the world, you can have, you know, all the success, all the money, or the riches, or unless you're sharing it with other people, it's absolutely meaningless. You know, just meaningless.
Yeah, I think you're right. You know, I mean, it's not about what you get; it's about what you can do with it, right? And you know, having in my own past kind of achieved all kinds of so-called success that wasn't really the success I wanted. Yeah. It's you find that actually the things that are your achievements are almost the things that trap you, and it's not being open and honest about what you really want and not making yourself vulnerable. And you know, to me, a big part of kind of being prepared to ask for help is actually saying, do you know what, I'm vulnerable here, I don't know everything. Yeah. And I don't know if it's this you know, I'm trying to think how to explain this. I don't know if it's like an age thing. You know, I don't know if it's something that's a realization we all get as we get older, that we just become more comfortable in our own skin, or if it is a, you know, taking time to practice working on ourselves that actually, you know, means that we become more comfortable with these. I can't say, because I've kind of done the two in tandem, you know. But it is a big, I don't know, from my experience, it is a big thing to be able to say, do you know what, I'm not perfect. I don't have all the answers. I can learn something new every single day, and I'm open to that. And that's how I get better and more comfortable in my life. And when I say more comfortable, I don't mean, you know, financially more comfortable, whatever. I mean more comfortable inside. Yeah, you know, I get to actually appreciate me and to like being me, to like being in my own skin, as opposed to constantly looking for external stimulus. And yeah, I think it's, you know, I personally think having that openness or that vulnerability is really, really important. And, you know, getting over that teenage thing of I know all the answers and who the hell are you? And, you know, I can think of the same sort of things with my parents, of them giving me some very sage advice that I really should have listened to, and me thinking, yeah, what do you know? You're old, right?
I think it's got to be an element of not necessarily age, but a learned thing, Neil, like you said, because we're not taught to be vulnerable. You know, when we're young and we're in education, we're taught to be strong, and education and peer groups tell you to be strong and the strongest and the fittest, and that it's not something we're told to express really. But I think when you do get a little bit more time to kind of self-reflect and think about your own character and work with other people and see that they make mistakes and nothing major happens, it's okay, you know, I think that's when you learn about it and you think, right, well, actually, it's fine, you know, it's okay to be wrong sometimes. And believe me, that's hard for me to say. I'm totally independent. I used to be fiercely independent. But the more that I've let that go, I've just had much more exciting time, you know, and doing things wrong, I just laugh now, you know, even if it's quite major things, you know, you sort it out, and it's not the be-all and end-all. It doesn't define you when you make a mistake. It defines that moment and what you were doing, but it has no reflection on the inner you. So, yeah, making mistakes is good.
So, I mean, so Tom, you obviously mentioned, you know, your dad gave you that great advice. What advice would you give you? If you could go back and sit down on that bed with that younger version of you, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, I've thought about this one so often, and I always come back to the same thing, and that is do it now. Don't wait. You know, Frank, I made so many reasons not to do things, and none of them were valid, because all of them were relative to what if. And my advice now is to do it now. Whatever you're thinking of doing, to do it now. You know, I've achieved lots of different things in life, and you know, I've celebrated very little of them, and it's one of my regrets in a way, because there are so many times I could have celebrated and actually felt the achievements and felt and really sort of, you know, it was a success. And if I could have gone back and told myself, just do it now, and when you do it, you know, celebrate, enjoy it, celebrate other successes too, because when you do that, it has a profound impact on what we remember we can achieve. When I started celebrating achievements, when I started celebrating successes, it just took me into overdrive, because I had a regular reminder of what I could do in life. So that would be it. Do it now, don't wait, and celebrate.
Do you have a specific way that you celebrate things? You know, is there a practice of, you know, I mean, for example, I keep a gratitude journal. I mean, it's a really big thing for me. Do you have something similar to that you do in your life that kind of gives some consistency, I suppose, to the way that you celebrate things? And you know, you mentioned having a reminder because you've celebrated. Is there any kind of thing you do around that you can share?
I love the gratitude thing, and it's actually something I've really taken on board a lot. For me, it's what's profound really is marking the moment and actually saying, this has happened, I've achieved this, or this has been a success, and marking it consciously and unconsciously, then giving thanks and saying thank you and sending out love to, you know, to the people who've been part of that, because we never achieve anything on our own. It just doesn't happen. And all the things I've achieved on my own, they weren't successes. So I mark it and I give thanks and I send love, and I consciously become aware of it as a moment in time.
Yeah, I think that awareness, because it doesn't have to be a big celebration. I do a very, I'm going to I'm going to put this out there. So if I've got tasks to do each day, on the right-hand side of my desk, I'll have a pile of paper clips. And each time I complete that task, a paper clip goes to the left-hand side. If I've got 10 paper clips, I get a cup of tea. You know, and it just has to be that simple, because it's that kind of drive but also reward at the same time.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't have to go out and celebrate. I think what you said, Tom, about that awareness that you've achieved, you know, and letting yourself be aware of that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Really
So, go on. Sorry, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, obviously, in the nature of the work you do, I'm assuming you've dealt with some people who are going through some very challenging and difficult times in their life. Yeah, I don't know, but I assume a lot of the people that hunt you out, you know, they're either successful and want even more success, or they're somewhere that's quite a dark place and they want help to get out of it. Would that be a fair assumption?
Are you still there?
Yep.
It's a bit of a mixture, really. It's people that are in a dark place and want to get out of it, but it's also people that are incredibly successful and don't feel successful. You know, what a dark place is for many people is a very different thing, and what you can see outwardly. It's one of the things I appreciate, that we never really know what's going on inside of the person we're talking with. We just don't know. And that was a very freeing experience for me too, when I took that on board and realized that. It enabled me to be much more mindful and caring with people and just more patient. So a dark place can be very different for one person than it can for another. I've seen some incredibly successful people that feel like they've got nothing. So the very first thing, I guess, is always finding out what is that dark place for them. You know, what is the dark place? Because, you know, it can be easy to make judgment on people that are suffering, that have lots. Yet for them, it's still suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. And as part of that, I mean, do you find yourself dealing much with people kind of suffering or battling with addictions?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, a lot. You know, because a lot of the work I do with the people I work with, I see, you know, addictions is probably one of the, you know, the top things I work with. You know, cocaine addiction, you know, alcohol addiction, all kinds of addictions. There are more than you can imagine. some very elaborate ones at that. So yeah.
One of the kind of discussions we've had with some of our other guests is around addiction and whether it's a choice. You know, because somebody once said to me, do you know the difference between addiction and compulsion? And I went away and I had a long think about it after that conversation. And I ended up looking up the words in the dictionary, okay? And essentially, the conclusion that I came to just specifically on the words was compulsion is something you have no choice to do. Which then got me, myself, thinking, well, is addiction a choice? And to be honest, having battled some addictions of my own, it definitely didn't feel like a choice at the time.
No.
But with hindsight, I wonder if in some ways it was. And so, you know, from the position that you're in and the people you've worked with, I'd be really interested to know kind of your opinions on that.
Yeah, and I really have one as well, because I've been working with this for many years and you know, creating some life-changing difference in people's life. It's, again, it goes back to language. Can be, it can help us sometimes really pigeonhole people. You know, it's like I've seen a lot of people that come to me and say, I've just got an addictive personality, and I don't personally believe that exists. I don't see people come to me and say, you know, I've got an overweight personality, or I've got a smoker's personality, or an angry personality, or a broke personality. And often, I'm not saying it's a cop-out, because I don't believe that's entirely true with the people I see. I guess for me, initially, what addiction is a solution. It's a solution to a problem that that person is experiencing that they can't get a grip of, you know. And it starts out as that. And as with a lot of behaviours that we repeat over and over again, it then becomes an addiction, because if we do something long enough, we change our brain chemistry, and an addiction can then form. But initially, I believe it's a solution. And so what's important for me is getting back to the problem that the solution was trying to answer. And underneath, what often is there is fear, it's anger, it's loneliness, it's all of the things that we existentially suffer with, a void, if you like. Now, I'm not saying that everyone that has a food addiction has a void inside them, but there's something like that. We don't create addictions, because we like them, because most of them initially, after a while, are very unpleasant. So for me, it's about getting back to what was the solution trying to answer, because the addiction often, in a sense, becomes almost like a process of self-deception. We're deceiving ourselves that we need the addiction because it has become one. So let's put that aside and let's go back to what was there originally, and often that makes a huge difference.
I guess it's our form of kind of escape route as well, isn't it, as human beings, And once you find what you're trying to escape from, why you're escaping towards alcohol or sex or drugs or whatever it is, then you can tackle the problem, the deep-rooted problem. So, and I think and believe we're kind of pre-programmed to take the easy route. So avoidance and looking for that escape route is natural. I think, like you said, Tom, the addictive personality, I think we're all programmed in a way to do that. So yeah, getting to the root and finding what you're avoiding, I guess.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. Understand the need you were trying to meet by the behaviour that became addictive, rather than let me put it a different way. I had a conversation with somebody who I don't know that well, but has had a profound and fundamental impact on my life, actually, through just a small number of conversations. Okay, and one of the things this guy once said to me was something along the lines of, and this was around alcohol, and one of the things he was saying to me was, the not drinking is the easy part. The dealing with why you drank in the first place is the bit that takes the work.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
And I think what you've just said there, Tom, kind of completely goes in tandem with that. It's understanding how to have how to have a better strategy for dealing with the emotions or situations that you're using an addictive behavior to avoid or bypass, or just change your feelings about after it's happened.
Yeah, for sure.
But it fascinates me. I mean, do you notice common patterns when dealing with addiction? Does it tend to come back into like a handful of things, or are there a multitude of reasons and it's massively different for every single individual you see?
Well, there can be a multitude of different stories that people have that have led them to seek an outside solution to change their feelings. But then we get to the commonality between people is their feelings. And I have yet to meet someone that comes to see me and says, you know what, Tom, I just can't stand this happiness anymore. It's always about something they're struggling with, and so the commonality between the people I see is that they're struggling with the emotions that are hard to deal with, like fear and anger and sadness and loss. So it's those difficult emotions that tend to be the drivers of the behavior. But of course, the stories behind those are, they're just incredibly different for different people.
And do you think kind of routines of people's day has an influence on those emotions? Do you think there are, I don't know, certain patterns of behavior that if you build them into your kind of daily routine or your morning routine can help to combat that?
Absolutely. And one of the things I often get people to start focusing on very quickly is mindfulness. And it really helps to start by living consciously and living awarely, with awareness. And you see, with mindfulness, in terms of just focusing on an object for 60 seconds in a very simple way like that, it can be very misunderstood as to the power that can have. You hear people say, "Oh, mindfulness, that's just like meditation." Well, okay. In a way, yes, but when you actually focus on one single thing, or listening to the clock tick for a minute, you get very close to yourself all of a sudden. And when you get close to yourself, you can hear yourself, and when you can hear yourself, then you can answer. And so a very simple technique like that can get you profound changes in your life. So I always work with people initially to get them practicing mindfulness. I mean, in the beginning, I will take them through how they do that. So I'll teach them self-hypnosis as a method of that. But eventually what we want them to do is to become mindful very quickly, because it takes just a second. And so that's where I always start. The first thing in the morning is, practicing mindfulness.
The mindfulness as well, it gives us that space away from, like, day-to-day life is so chaotic and so attention grabbing, the amount, we've spoke before, Neil, about this, the amount of messages and signals and information that our brain gets bombarded. Like you said, Tom, even that 60 seconds, it calms and stills the mind so much, and it brings focus as well and clarity. Definitely, I'm 100% with you there. If there's one technique that people can do to change how they think, is definitely mindfulness or meditation, both very powerful.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you say there, Sue, about being bombarded with messages and all that kind of stuff. Because I think increasingly as well now, there's a tendency to the last thing before you go to bed is have I got any messages? First thing when I wake up is have I got any messages? Especially depending on the nature of people's jobs and an ever-connected world and friends and family in different time zones and things like that. So I mean, Tom, how in terms of your phone, how early in the morning do you check your phone? Are there things you always do before you pick your phone up, or is it, or is it something that, again, are you? I suppose what I'm asking is, are you one of these people that kind of always has your phone within an arm's reach, or or do you make it a conscious practice to kind of switch it off and be away from it?
Yeah, I definitely. I definitely see to the calls of nature before I do anything electronic.
Different kind of call.
But I tend to be up sort of 4:45, 5 o'clock, because I love that time of day and I'm productive then. But also I want to spend some time getting connected with myself. Now, in essence though, I do check my phone early in the morning. Not long after I've gotten up, because I switch my phone off at night, because otherwise it's pinging and dinging and the sounds they make is just like a different sound for everything, and so I turn it off at night. But in the morning I turn it on, because the first thing I want to do is check my kids are okay. Well, they're sort of 26 and 21 or 22, but they're still kids. They'll always be my kids, so I want to make sure that they're okay and see there's no messages that they've sent me. And in a sense, I also want to connect with people across the world. A lot of clients I work with are in the States or in Canada, or not so much in Europe because it's not that different. But I want to see how their days spend. But in essence, I limit it. Otherwise, it can take over.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, I've got one more question for you. Is there anything you want to add on any of that so far, Sue, before we fire into kind of our final question for Tom?
Yeah, we've been talking a little bit about habits and how you can bring different habits into your day. How big a part do you think our unconscious plays, Tom, in forming those habits? And have you got anything that you can give out to people who say, apart from the reflection and the mindfulness, how do you have that dialogue with that second voice or your unconscious to use it positively?
Well, from my perspective, I have the luxury of working with people every day and helping them get connected to their subconscious mind or unconscious mind. And you see, you really can't do that without connecting to your own. It's a process, it's a co-creative process in a way. So I have the luxury of, quite a few times during the day connecting to my own unconscious process and seeing what comes up. But, there's also a time where I want to purposefully do that. So I use self-hypnosis. It's something I've been doing for many years to communicate and see what's there. I'd ask myself a question last thing at night and in the morning check that message, So, yeah, I use self-hypnosis as a tool of doing that. It works for me really well, and it's something I teach everyone I can.
Okay, great, thanks.
Fantastic. Well, you've been a fascinating guest, Tom. We've really enjoyed speaking with you. One last question I want to finish with, really, and that is, if you could choose just one book to go onto the school curriculum in every school, what would it be and why?
Oh, I can only have one?
Yeah, only one. Only one.
Just one. Okay, I thought about that a lot, and there's 4 books, but you only allow me to have one.
Right, well, give us if you want to give us the 4, give us the 4. But then give us the one that if you've got 4, but actually we said, okay, well, look, 3 of them now we don't have the budget to buy that many books or something, what is the one? But now you've said there's 4, we need to know what all 4 are.
Of course you do, because I've said it.
Yeah.
Very sneaky, Tom.
So
that's the problem with interviewing a hypnotist, right?
Yeah, and you're going to want to buy all of them because they're just amazing. None of mine are involved in there, by the way. So the first one, and I bore in mind also, the development of that person at school, and I think the first one is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, because I wanted really, wouldn't it be wonderful if they realised that the answer is actually within them before they set out on a life and a journey of trying to find happiness. It's already there. So that was the first one, and then I thought to myself, well, probably need some skills as well to help them access themselves. So Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins was my second one, and then I thought, well, they need a plan. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with Stephen Covey was the third one, and then something I think that actually really should be taught in schools, and it probably isn't a book, it's a course, but Money by Tony Robbins. And what's in there it's worth just it's gold dust. But if you want me to really focus on one, and I've only got the funds to buy one, then I would say The Alchemist is where I'd start.
I love that book. It's a fantastic book, actually, because the way it's written, it works for kids. My 6-year-old has listened to the audio version of that book and gets it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a fantastic choice. Fantastic.
Yeah. I believe Einstein once said, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself.
Yeah.
So for school, for kids at school, what a wonderful way to start. The answer's within.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. It's been fascinating talking to you. Is there anything you want to add, or anything about how people can connect with you, or anything like that you'd just like to include as well?
Yeah, there is on my website. There's a free book I'm actually giving away. So your viewers can go and download my latest book, which is It's a co-authored book with Joe Vitale and a few other authors, and they can get that at the MidasTouchBook.com. So that's the MidasTouchBook.com. That's something which will give them an idea of the kind of work I do and some ideas that will help. So that's a gift I'd like to give.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I hear there's another book in the pipeline as well, Tom. Can you give us any ideas or any insights on what that's going to cover?
Well, there's two in the pipeline. I can tell you about one. As I'm just about to publish my doctoral dissertation on anger and emotion, the next book will be about emotion and how we can actually use emotion to help us to live a better life and to achieve the things we want to achieve. So that's the other one. The other one is a bit of a collaboration, which I can't tell you about that one.
Okay. Watch this space.
Yeah, watch this space. Great bit of incompletion there, and when the book's done, who knows? Maybe we'll have to get you to come back.
I'd love to. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love the work you're doing. It's just awesome. It sounds like you really had some great times on your retreat lately.
Yeah, retreat was amazing, absolutely amazing. And interestingly, just picking up on some of what we've been talking about here, there was a lot of people that came on my retreat thinking they're coming to lose a bit of weight, to maybe feel a bit healthier in their bodies. I think a lot of the guests were surprised how much difference was made in their mind.
Fantastic.
And how how they left feeling lighter emotionally, not just physically, and yeah, I mean, I feel really honoured to have been a part of that, actually, and a bit like you say about being driven to help others. That's why I do what I do as well. It's and when you see those changes, when you see those breakthroughs, you can't buy that. You really can't buy that.
Yeah. Well, you're doing an absolutely sterling job, my friend. Keep it up.
Awesome. Speak to you soon.
Nice
okay.
to see you, Tom.
Nice to meet you, Sue.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.